Hello everybody, how are you going? And welcome to Canadian versus Australian Lifeguards, which will certainly be interesting to see how the two size up, considering, in my mind, the Australians should have it in the bag. If it was skiing, sure, give it to the Canadians, but this is our territory. Oh, nippers. Oh.
It's just one of many skills required to be a good lifeguard: speed, endurance, and of course the ability to stay afloat in rough seas.
Yes. 1992.
The Australians are widely recognized as the best on the physical side.
Around it! I'd hope so, in a way.
But when it comes to first aid, actual life-saving skills, Vancouver's lifeguards come out on top.
Interesting.
A lot of work to be a lifeguard in Australia as well. They have to be very fit. Up here, we don't have to be as fit, but we do have to be much more qualified in first aid and CPR.
They're more technical, I think, here. We're in it, I think, more for the competition than the first aid side of it. And here
What? I got to let it finish, but that is just crazy.
they're really into the first aid part, yeah.
Oh my goodness. That really is quite an interesting highlight between the two, and I guess maybe is one more medically trained, almost like a nursing position on the beach dedicated to saving lives directly from the ocean, where Australian lifeguards, as far as I've ever told, it's just people that have grown up living and breathing around the beach, whether they're surfing or I don't know, they're just around the beach. Generally, they are going to be surfing, especially as they're getting into this kind of profession, but they don't have any real... Originally, they don't have any real qualifications. I don't believe there is a lifeguard course in terms of a university or anything like that. They just rock up, they do the CPR training, they do all the float station training. Obviously, reading and knowledge around the ocean as well is going to be very, very different around the world to some degree. You're going to be having rips, temperature changes, and then even per beach, it's going to come down to people's knowledge of the area that can make a massive difference in these literally life or death situations. But to be saying that the Australians are generally, in 1992 apparently, the best in the world, the most physically capable lifeguards, compared to the Vancouverians or the Canadians having the best CPR. It's just like, just combine your knowledge, please. I mean, one's just getting fitter and one's knowledge, but combine your attributes. But listening to this guy talk once again, I'm now wondering, how has the lifeguard scene changed in both of these countries in 30 years? You know, this is 1992. Are the Canadians now required to be more fit? Are the Australians more CPR medically trained? I mean, I feel like they are. I don't know what the relative perspective would be compared to the Canadians these days, but I know that the boys in blue, in a good way, in the lifeguards, even down at Bondi, of course, which is going to be tourist haven, they have some serious things that they have to deal with on a very, very regular basis because people don't understand the power of the surf that can be in there, and so they do have to be knowledgeable in so many different areas. Of course, they're not nurses and ambulances and doctors and surgeons, but they do all right for what they've got on hand. And actually, if nothing else, what I've just said is
They're
backed
more
up by this lady.
technical, I think, here. We're in it, I think, more for the competition than the first aid side of it. And here they're really into the first aid part, yeah.
Yeah, it's just so interesting. Like, it feels like the Canadians were actually doing it to be a lifeguard service, to do the job, so to say, and actually save people's lives and not be a lifeguard, but a life savior and so many other things, where apparently lifeguarding in Australia in 1992 was just competition. And of course, that does come from, like I said, nippers originally. Of course, everyone just loves surfing, running on the sand and all those kind of things, but that to then be carried all the way through into the profession, I think is a little bit over the top. I feel like as much as people can enjoy being outdoors, getting burnt to a crisp in this middle of the Australian summer, at the same time, you need to be loving it a bit more than just for the competition. What is it? Oh, like
Australian
relay.
lifeguards compete in relays like this one all the time. That competition gives them exposure, and that exposure prompts more and more people to sign up.
Interesting.
About, how long was it? 3 minutes? More people involved in general. Over there, even though the life-saving part of it is large, the competition side of it is very much to the forefront. And that's why the Australians have the strength that they have had for a number of years, because the competitive side of it is so big.
Yeah, and you're driving yourself to actually be the best in terms of these activities, sports, even apparatuses, if you want to be calling that, between boarding, surfing, swimming, all those kind of things. If you're training like a professional athlete to be winning competitions, that is a very different thing to be just saving people's lives. You are going to be so much stronger in these direct relay competitions because that's exactly what you're doing, and then you just happen to be out on the water so you can pull people onto your board at the same time. And now, like I was saying, I do feel as though some things have changed in 30 years in that regard. I don't know too many people that are just signing up for the competition's sake, but there is a big difference, I'm sure, between the enticing factor of so many people living on the coastline in beach areas in Australia compared to the relative people in Ottawa, Montreal, all those places. Yes, you've got the lakes, and I guess that's going to require some degree of lifeguards, but the population density around the coastline is just not the same. Of course, just coming over to Google Maps, I can see that the geography and everything is very different, but I just wanted to quickly confirm whether I'm seeing a little decent kind of beach, Burleigh Beach. There are going to be beaches. Oh, is the entire lake sand? Whoa, hang on a second. Is this whole thing sand surrounded? Is the whole thing sand? Like, what is the bed of the lakes? Because I know that the seabed of the ocean is generally sand and rock and things, but I would have thought that this would be more like dirt, considering it's compacted earth. I mean, I guess if I do come over to what I can only presume would be very, very expensive lakeside residences all the way over here, it does look a little bit more rocky. It does look beautiful at the same regard, but I guess they've all been, I don't know, would you call it terraformed? Are the rocks there naturally? Because that's quite big stones. If I'm seeing them from space, you can definitely not say that that is just a sandy deposit. Maybe there's sand there, but it's not just sand and only sand. Whereas if you come over here, is it sand? I don't know. I feel like, you know, if you went anywhere along the entire Australian coast, you're just having a different experience. Yes, even if you come all the way down to Sydney, you can just see these beaches and it's just different. But does that mean that the entire lake is going to be patrolled? No. Does that mean that a lot of Australian beaches are unpatrolled? Yes, as there is no way you can be expecting a country to be able to resource, not even just pay, but get and resource enough people to be all the way around Australia or even just surrounding a great lake, like linking arms or every 50 meters as though it's some South American football or soccer game. No, it's not going to be possible. So be careful out there. These guys, as good as they are at CPR and as good as they are at swimming and boarding and everything, they can't always save you. In saying that though, Australia has a professional lifeguard service and also a volunteer lifeguard service, and the volunteer lifeguard services help either the professional lifeguard services or help monitor beaches that don't really have many people at them, if any people. They're really there as a last resort to try and kind of monitor the kids, whether the kids are 70 or 7, it doesn't matter, but just monitor the people in the water compared to really just being able to provide incredible services at a moment's notice. They're there to kind of steer people away from rips and not too much else, and that's fine. They're doing their best, and that's what the volunteer service is all about. But I wonder, with the amount of beaches that Australia has, is that more of a requirement than Canada or anywhere else in the world? I can't imagine that on UK beaches, for instance, on those pebble cold stone floor beaches, that they would have many lifeguards out there. As one, not many people are going to be getting in that freezing cold water compared to this, and two, I don't think many people are just going to the beach in comparison to go in the ocean. They might go there to get a tan, but the water is kind of off limits, and that is for very, very good reason. Whether it's cold, whether it's murky, whether it's next to the River Thames, it's different.
In Australia, lifeguards only need a basic understanding of life-saving skills, unlike Canadian lifeguards who must be certified in first aid.
There we go. That makes sense.
So it's not seen as a sport here, more as a medical precaution. But when it comes to physical competition, anyone in Canada soon could be allowed to take part.
We would like to move towards that so that people could come down and do a run, swim, run. Anybody could do it. Anybody could do it.
Of course, that would be fantastic for people.
The Royal Life-Saving Society of Canada hopes to get more people involved in physical competition by staging more events like this one, making the sports side of life-saving more visible and more exciting. Chris Edwards, CBC News, Vancouver.
That's a lovely little idea in terms of, I wonder how they went in the end. Obviously, it has been 30 years. Are there more people that are now lifeguards or not? Is it changed? Has it become more of a thing? I'm also now thinking, just watching those guys emerge out of the water, how many people actually go swimming in Canada? And not the crazy ice bearders that are swimming in the Great Lakes, but considering that the water temperatures, I've read from you guys directly saying that even in the middle of summer, it gets too cold. You'll go lake boarding behind a boat or things like that, but to actually just go swimming for enjoyment isn't going to be as much of a thing. And so to be having a bit more of a competition where you're really working for it, you're swimming, you're running, you're boarding, you're all of that, maybe that's going to be a bit more enticing to keep people warm and, like I said, really help their health, as well as so much of the water is so good for you in so many ways. However, this is the bit that I was waiting for that I didn't actually expect them to be covering, and that is the fact that they said the Canadians at the time were the only ones out of this pair that had to be CPR qualified. CPR certified is what they called it, but regardless of whatever you want to be calling it, I can at least confirm, at least to the absolute best of my knowledge, given all the context and all the push around so many people with backyard pools having CPR signs and doctor's signs and all those kind of things up around the pool being legislated, all those kind of things, I can basically 100% confirm that every single lifeguard, be it volunteer or professional, would have CPR training, CPR certification, and a whole host of other things, whether that be defib training, a whole range of things of nursing training, spinal. It's not just compressions and those kind of things, how to get water out of people's lungs, how to restart a heart. No, there's so many other possible injuries that can occur in the surf when people get dumped by a wave on their neck, broken arms, wrists, splints, all these kind of things. They may not be able to treat everything, but they do know how to manage it the best until the ambulance gets there. And so that's where I think, as far as I can tell, a lot has changed in 30 years for the better. I can only presume there's a lot more safety and a lot more knowledge about what is truly going to be best practice in certain situations, you know, and not even just in competition senses. It's not like they're out there every day just happening to be swimming past someone that's drowning while they're out there practicing for their competition. No, they have all of that on hand, the knowledge, the power, even just sun safety is something that's just come to mind actually. How does Canada manage that? As that's been a huge change in the last 50, 30, 10 years. There's so much push, at least from an Australian perspective, and of course Australia does have a very high push of that because it does have the highest skin cancer rates in the world. But does Canada even follow these mantles, and do they actually end up sharing information? They were the best at CPR, we were the best at fitness. It's the same thing with fighting fires. Canada has problems, Australia has problems, the US has problems, people fly planes all over the place. There is obviously real problems to actually deal with, to instead of band-aiding it, actually trying to not have them happen in the first place. But then again, I guess in a way they are fairly similar. One is dealing with the dangers of water, one is dealing with the dangers of fire. Everyone needs to be learning and just getting better at dealing with all these problems as we move into the new world. And just generally, if we were to look back on this in 30 years, you go, wow, I can't believe you don't have this random thing that no one knows about yet, because it's just the best practice that we've now discovered. And so hopefully everyone's safety continues to get better from these professionals, but also people's knowledge about the entire thing. Be ocean safe, be fire safe, be sun safe, and be knowledgeable. Please don't just leave it to the professionals when it could be so easily managed by yourself.